What's up everybody, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be installing my YSS G series rear shocks on my Yamaha Nmax. So I'm going to start with the left shock. That's the troublesome one, not the troublesome one, but it has more trouble than the right side one, basically because there is an airbox in the way. First thing you want to do is move that slightly out of the way. You don't have to completely remove it, but you want to move it aside. And to do that, there are two bolts. One here, a silver one in the back there. Let me just show you again. That one there in the back there, and one down here. That one there. And for that, you're going to need the 10mm socket wrench. So take those two bolts out now. Once you've removed these two bolts, put them to one side and keep them safe. Now that your airbox has a little bit of movement, you can start to do the work. I feel like we don't have to say this, but just in case some of you are still propped up your Nmax on the side stand there, actually stick your bike up on the center stand there. That will allow the rear wheel to rotate slightly and obviously give you a safe working bike to work on. Right, so once you've done that, come to the rear and there should be a hose you see here, unless you've modified your airbox of course. If this is here, all you do is pinch down on this part here, pull it to the back, and this little air tube should come off. Remove that and keep that to the side slightly. And once you've removed this tube from either this end or that end, it doesn't really matter, you can then move your airbox up, which reveals this bolt here. That bolt there is a 12mm bolt, so use your socket wrench and this time use a 12mm head to remove that bolt. Do that now. Once you've removed that bolt, put it somewhere safe, and now you should be able to move your suspension slightly, okay? Mine's very stiff in there. Now this part's not tricky, but if you haven't done it before, you may be a little bit confused. If you look up inside there, there's another bolt, okay? You can get to that and remove it, okay? So do that now. For that bolt, you actually need a size 14 spanner, or I'm using this ratcheting spanner, okay? So I can take it off more easily. Okay, once you've undone that nut inside there, don't worry if it's fallen out or anything, you haven't lost it forever. Yamaha have actually made it an easy way for you to catch it. When the bolt comes off, remember that there's two washers, okay? So this is how this is installed, the suspension tower. First of all, on that rod that this is installed on, this washer goes in the rod first, and then the suspension arm slips on there, and then the second washer goes on, and then the nut goes on the end, and then that's done. So this is sandwiched in between these two, and the nut just goes on the end. Don't worry if you dropped all these parts in there, you get them out easily. Once you've taken the nut off though, it normally drops, it can drop, okay? But if you're careful, it won't. And then the arm's gonna be in here. All you do is pivot it, so I'm gonna try and wiggle it that way, okay? It takes a bit of force. You might wanna move your airbox out of the way, use both hands, twist it one way and then try and push it as far that way as it will go, and it should just come off like that. Okay, so mine just kind of comes off. It's going to be quite difficult using one arm, but there we go, the top's come off. Okay, I've done it. I actually did it before, but to try and give you an idea, I just tried to do it again. That comes off, okay? Now, if you have dropped your bolt or some of these washers, don't worry too much. I'll show you where they'll come out, okay? They'll probably come out more times than not. They'll drop in there, and what you've got here, right there, is a channel, and this is a slide. Anything that drops in there will come out here, and there's a little hole in the end there. Okay, see where my finger's going? That's a hole, and it'll just drop out here, and you'll be able to pick it up. If it hasn't, what the washers normally do is if they fall in this side, then this little tray here does have a slot in it just there. Okay, if you put your fingers in there and just pull this tray down a little bit as hard as you can, like that, you normally see in the slot there, where's the slot? Let me just try and find it there. That little slot there can come down slightly and the washer could fall out. What's happened to my bolt is it's actually fallen in here, okay? And don't worry too much if that happens to you, because if you look up here, that's the seat, you'll be able to find your bolt. It'll either be on this side or that side. So you can just get a tool or a pincer, put it in there and wiggle it back out. Okay, so it's actually quite easy. You don't have to worry too much, but my nut's actually in there and I'll be doing that to get that out now. There, if you look inside that little hole there, I'm holding the flashlight in, you can see where the bolt is, just out of focus there in the center. I'm trying to get to that. But it's difficult because everything else around here is magnetic. Okay, so what I've done is I've made a makeshift pen and the sellotape the inside of the pen onto the end of this pen and then put some magnets on the end of that. I fished out the, it's magnetized the nut that I need and I've just pulled it up and then pushed it under. So where is it now? Where I need it to be, just there, magnetized. So I'm going to grab that now. So if you get this problem, don't worry, just try your best not to drop the nut inside the hole. If you do, don't panic. It's not lost inside the bike, you can actually get it. Okay, now put that nut to one side. And now we install the YSS shock on the left side. So don't forget, as I said, there's that bar there on the bottom, which you probably can't see. I'll just see if I can get some light to it. There it is, that bar there. Okay, you've got to thread things onto that now. First thing you're going to put on is one of these washers. After this washer, then you're going to carefully turn this about, twiddle it until you get this arm hooked on, and then push it all the way to the end. And then you put the second washer on the end, and then lastly is the nut that we just took off. Do that now. I'm just going to put this bolt on now by hand. It's going to be very difficult. And once you've actually got that bolt on, which is really difficult, you're going to kind of hold the bolt with one hand on this side and one arm going on underneath, and then you thread it on. You have to thread it on that way. I've managed to do that. Once you've done that, remember to tighten up the bolt there, that bolt, using one of these tools, or the tool you use to take it off with, and then just reassemble everything basically. Okay, so you align this up with that hole there, make sure it's perfectly aligned up, and then you put the bolt back in and then thread it in, okay, with your tools. Do that now. If you're having trouble threading this bolt in because it's not aligning properly, what I normally do is put my foot underneath like so and just wiggle the rear wheel a little bit as I'm agitating this bolt, and it will go in eventually. And then you tighten this up. Now be sure to, when you tighten this up and the bolt up top there, do not over tighten. Just a little bit kind of tight is okay, not too tight, because you will damage the parts. Okay, do that now. And finally on this side, reattach this hose if you removed yours, and put these two bolts in on the underside of the airbox there, and just tighten that up. Do that now. And that's it, that's mine completed on the left hand side. I'm going to do the same to the right hand side now. That's all you got to do as well. Right, so I'm going to take, as with this side, the exhaust is in the way, so that nut or bolt or whatever there has to be taken off with a size 12 ratcheting spanner. So that's what I'm going to do now. Once you've taken that nut out or bolt, keep that to one side and keep it safe. And remember, for the nut up there, just there, as you can see in the picture, that needs to be taken off with a size 14 spanner or ratcheting spanner, as I'm going to use. Take that off now. Right then, so I've just taken this nut off. Remember, after the nut comes a washer. If you don't want to fish that out, then try and take that out very carefully, like I'm doing now. And that should just drop to my fingers. There we go. And then obviously you just take the suspension, the shock off, and then kind of angle it without scratching anything or destroying your exhaust. I'm going to need both hands for that, so I'm going to do that now. And just like that, without any force at the correct angle, it came off. So I'm now going to put the new shock on there, the YSS shock. There we go, I've threaded the last shock on there. I'm now going to reinstall, so I'm going to put this washer back on the thread and then re-thread this bolt back on. And I'm then going to tighten it up with the size 14 ratcheting wrench or whatever, spanner. Here we go. And that's it, that's the nut just tightened up on that side. So now all I got to do is thread the last bolt, wherever I put that. I kept that safe there. This one, just thread it in and then retighten it back on there, and that's done. And that's mine done. I had a little bit of trouble installing the bolt, getting that to align up the three holes together so the bolt wouldn't go in. What happened was this hole on the suspension arm was actually lower than the hole I was installing it on. So obviously all I did was hold on to the shock this way. With my strong left hand, I pushed it up slightly until the holes are lined up, and with my other hand I threaded the bolt in and then started screwing it in, and that's how it lined up. So it depends how yours is. If your shock is either too long or too short, you can wiggle it whichever way you want, but my shock was actually too long, so I put my finger here and I just pushed up as hard as I could, about 1 millimeter, until it lined up. So that's pretty easy. Once you've installed the springs, it's now time to adjust the preload, and that's done by this part here. You turn it either clockwise to increase or counterclockwise all the way out until it reaches the top, which is fully decreased. So you can adjust that depending on your weight. But before you thread this, make sure that you undo the locking screw, which is that part there. These are actually just holes for the adjustment tool, but this here there's an actual physical screw in there which prevents it from unwinding or winding when you're riding. And that's done with the tool that they give you, the Allen key or Allen wrench, as they like to call it. That fits in there like this. You turn it clockwise until it comes out enough that this can turn freely, okay? Once you've done that, put that to one side and make sure you don't unscrew this too much so that it falls out, okay? Or if you're worried about it falling out, just unscrew it fully and hold on to it for now. Once you've hand wound this until it becomes too tight so you can't actually wind it anymore, you use the adjustment tool, which comes included with the springs. They just go in there and you turn it like so, okay, like that, until you get the correct adjustment. Now once you've adjusted one side, if I haven't told you already, make sure you're on the center stand, okay, before you do any adjustments. And once you've done all the adjustments that you need on one side, use some calipers and measure the gap, and then make sure you have the same gap on the other side of the springs, okay, and the other set of springs on the other side. Just to make sure they're both equal. If you don't have a set of calipers, don't worry, there's a cheap way of doing this. You can actually use a piece of paper, and what you do is you just measure the gap and wedge the piece of paper in there, and then crease a line, and then use that as your measuring point. So you take it round to the other side of the spring, the other spring on the other side, and then use that to say, to see exactly where it should be adjusted to, so that both springs are even, okay, so that one spring isn't doing extra load compared to the other one. Once you've done that, make sure all your bolts are nipped tight, okay, slightly tight, but don't overdo it. Then take it off your stand and give it a test, making sure all these parts, the reservoir clears anything and doesn't foul anything. Lightly, don't sit on it and start bashing up and down, just sit on it lightly and make sure it clears everything, nothing's catching, and then you'll be fine. Well, that's it guys, that was my video on how to install the YSS G series springs on the Yamaha Nmax. Hope this video helped someone out there. Thank you very much for watching. This is Astro, signing out. Look at the state of my hands. This is from installing a new rear tyre last night. Just by using, what do they call it? Bead breaker kit, one of those like $15 bead breaker kits you can get online. That's all I had. That was literally the only tool I used, and in the middle of winter. Luckily there was the heating was on. But yeah, this is my new rear tyre. It's pretty fat. It's a 150 section now, as opposed to the 130 section, which comes standard on the Yamaha Nmax.